This is a production of WEDU PBS, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota.
Florida This Week is the Tampa Bay area's longest-running primetime public affairs program, and soon there will be some changes. But first, we're talking with long-standing moderator Rob Lorei, and we take a look at the show's history. That's next on a special edition of Florida This Week. Welcome to Florida This Week. I'm Lissette Campos. After 24 years, we are beginning a new chapter for the show. But first, we're saying a fond farewell to Rob Lorei, who will be moving on to a new WEDU interview series called Perspectives.
And now, moderator Rob Lorei.
As host and managing editor of Florida This Week since 2001, Rob has steered the program for decades with unflappable grace and insight. His tenure is marked by countless impactful discussions and an enduring legacy in public media as well as our Tampa Bay community. Rob, thanks for being here and sharing just a little more of your time with us.
Lissette, thanks a lot. That was a great intro. Who wrote it? It was way over the top.
All true.
I hope my mom is watching this on the link, but thank you for the intro. How did I get the job as host of the show?
How did you land here? Yeah.
So I had been a panelist on a show called Tampa Bay Week, which was hosted by the great Syl Farrell. Syl was moving on. Channel 3 wanted to keep the show on the air. And they said, they called me up and said, Rob, would you try out for the show? I had no idea that I'd be even in the competition, because I think part of my competition was experienced TV anchors from other local TV stations. So I sat down in front of a camera, which I had rarely done since college, and I did a sample program for them, and they liked it, and they hired me. This is in 2001, right after 9/11. Right. Lots of things are in the news, and I was shocked that they hired me, because I had one suit. I don't think I had that many dress shirts. I had a few ties. Yeah. But I certainly didn't have the wardrobe to host the show. But I was shocked when they did it. My hair, of course, was all wrong back then. It was a little longer and a little fuller, but it wasn't TV anchor hair.
You've been part of the community for so long. I think a lot of folks assume that you're from Tampa. Tell us how you ended up landing here.
I've been here for 47 years. Moved down from Pennsylvania. Okay. But the reason I moved down was I helped start the first community radio station in Florida, WMNF. And the radio station when I came down had nothing. It had just an office. But we built the studios. We went door to door. We asked for money to start the radio station. And it was a really, when we started it, it was quite eclectic. We had, everything from bluegrass to all sorts of music in Spanish. We had reggae, we had blues, we had jazz, we had a little bit of public affairs. But I came down in June of 1978, and it took us more than a year to September of 1979 to get it on the air. A lot of that time was spent really going door to door, just begging for money, which is what we did, and surprisingly it worked.
That's incredible. So many viewers know you as the man in front of the camera, but what was it like to start a radio station?
Well, it was really hard because we did everything by hand. So we built some of the control boards by hand. We
built them by hand?
Yep. We did all the soundproofing by hand. We found old carpeting and used it as soundproof on the walls. And, people thought it would never work. People were predicting that it would never get on the air. But sure enough, we were able to do it in about, 15 months or so. It was a labor of love, and a lot of people supported us back then.
The radio business has changed so much over the years. What was it like when you were starting it?
Well, I'll tell you about reporting, because we started reporting almost immediately. In this town, this area, Tampa Bay, had 8 local daily newspapers. There was a local in every city, and there were some afternoon papers. And then there were radio reporters all over who were doing local news. We had 3 network TV stations, network affiliated TV stations. We had a UPI radio reporter. We had an AP reporter. So when I went to a press conference and we would stick a microphone in front of the governor or whoever, the local state attorney. There would be about a dozen reporters there.
All the little mic stands.
All the mics on the
Yeah.
mic stand. So it looked like a presidential event because this was a really big news town, very competitive. Everybody was going out trying to get the story. It's really changed today. There's so little. I mean, newspapers are much weaker now.
Yes.
Radio really doesn't do much reporting. The TV stations are still okay, but they're struggling. Their staffs are down. So back then when we started, it was a very competitive news town. And we tried to keep up. It was hard because we didn't have the big budget, but we tried.
You're a man of many talents. So not just the host and the moderator of Florida This Week, you're also the managing editor. Can you tell our viewers a little more about that?
Well, what I do, and my great producer, Spencer Briggs, every Monday, I've read all the newspapers I can over the weekend. And Monday I say, Spencer, I think this is going to be the big story this week. We can never tell. We don't have a crystal ball. So I give them an idea of who might be the best guest to come on and address the stories. But of course, the news cycle changes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm reading the newspapers, which I think are still, I mean, I think digital and newspapers are still the best source of reporting. There is good reporting on TV stations, but by far, you got to keep up with the Tampa Bay Times.
You have more time to flesh it out as well as a print and digital reporter than broadcaster.
So I've got to read the Tallahassee Democrat and the Tampa Bay Times. I've got to read the Lakeland Ledger and the Sarasota Herald Tribune, the Miami Herald. The Orlando Sentinel is a great newspaper. So I read that. And then by Thursday, we come up with a list of maybe 10 or 15 stories that we might want to cover. And it's very democratic. So Spencer and I send out the list to our panelists, who it takes a few days because not everybody can do the show that week. And we have a big group of people that want to do the show and who are loyal panelists.
To you
and to the hard work of Spencer,
yeah.
And so we let our panelists vote on the topics. And so Thursday morning they all vote, and then I write the script, and then we come in Friday morning and we record the show.
So the show's been on the air for more than 20 years. It wasn't always called Florida This Week, was it?
Yeah, when Sil was hosting, it was called Tampa Bay Week, and we had a manager here, Dick Lobo, who was he was like the Lou Grant of station managers.
They write characters based on him.
Yeah, so Dick was a fantastic manager, and he would come in and say, how the hell are we doing a show still called Tampa Bay Week when we get into 16 counties? Because WEDU has one of the largest reaches of any PBS station in the country, and the largest in Florida. So he said, you got to come up with a name change. So we came up with the name Florida This Week, although we're still very interested in what's going on in Tampa Bay and Sarasota, but we try not to be too narrow every week. Prior to that, the show was all about Tampa and Hillsborough County, which is a small portion of the community. It's about 1 million or so people, which is important, but the total reach here at the station is about 5.5 million. So we try to find something that's going to appeal to folks that are in Lakeland and Hardee County, and also in Citrus County and Pasco.
It's really the entire West Central Florida area.
It is.
You've done hosting the Senate debates, you've interviewed governors, so many different candidates at all levels, and you've covered some really prickly issues as well. I think that for me as a Cuban American, I just have to ask you about the debate over the U.S. policy with Cuba. And what was that like for you? Because I would watch you on TV and I would think, how does he navigate through so many different opinions and still remain so graceful? Yeah.
Well, we had two very sharp advocates for the sides. We had Hal Fox on, who was wanted to change the U.S. policy towards Cuba, and E.J. Otero was on the other side. Very strong, and E.J. Still wanted to keep the policy in place. Of course, the horrors of Fidel Castro's regime, he hated that. Al thought that it was time to move on, and so we had two other people that kind of were sidekicks to them. I think the way to do it is just make sure that everybody gets equal time and is fair. And you want to go back and forth, and you don't want to let anybody dominate the conversation. And we did. We successfully did it, where I think both sides felt like they were able to make their case of why we should change the policy or why we should keep it as it is. And then what we did, this is a long tradition on Florida This Week, is that we went to a local bar in Hyde Park called 4 Green Fields. So all 4 of the panelists went out with me and Spencer, my producer, and we sat there, and over a beer, I think we solved all the problems and all the disagreements that we ever had over the, it was surprising to hear Al and EJ agree on some points about Cuba. And so we found common ground.
Right, and that's the beauty of having a show like this, a public affairs show, where everyone knows that they have a seat at the table and that we can discuss difficult topics in a way that's respectful, and the viewers can decide for themselves
exactly
which position they want to take.
And I almost never cut people off, and I never, I might ask them a tough follow-up question, but I never cut them off so that they can't get their ideas out, because I want to hear the whole paragraph. I want to hear the whole idea.
Well, did you get the rest of the story when you were taking the guests to the restaurant afterwards?
Yeah, I think on TV sometimes people have their guard up and are ready for combat, and I think once you take them out to the restaurant or the bar and you talk to them, their guard comes down, and they're able to find that common humanity. I don't think anybody's ever left the table here angry. And nobody's ever shouted at anybody. Nobody stormed off the set. Some people will shake their heads at what some of the other guests say, but there's never been really a personal attack, I think, on the show, which is great.
I was told that Governor Charlie Crist was one of your guests.
Yeah.
And after the show, you all went over to the restaurant.
Of course, we took him
You
to
have to
4
have
Green
some
Fields.
good stories about that.
So we took, Charlie had been governor for 1 term. This is about 2012. And we took him over to 4 Green Fields. Now, Charlie, as you know, is rail thin. So I was curious as to what's he going to drink. And he drank a half a Miller Lite. What was weird was that the bar was filled with people. And nobody gave Charlie a second look.
No.
And I'm wondering what's going on. Has the bloom fallen off? Because he was golden every time he ran for office.
Everybody recognized him.
Exactly, and every time he ran for office, he won for a while. He had quite a good stretch.
Yeah.
So we're leaving the bar, and I'm thinking, wow, maybe Charlie no longer has the magic. And suddenly, everybody from the bar gets up and follows us out the door and says things like, "We didn't want to interrupt, what your conversation was, but we want your autograph." And this big long line of people is standing there trying to get their autograph with Charlie.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And back then, did folks were taking selfies too, or not really?
This was kind of pre-selfie. I think there were small cell phone cameras. They're the flip kind of cell phone cameras. Yeah.
Over the years, you've interviewed so many different people, from the common everyday man, everyday heroes who are at work quietly in our community, to some really powerful people. One of the folks that you interviewed was the late former President Jimmy Carter.
WEDU.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Great to have you here. I want to ask you,
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Let me just say this about the common people too. Sometimes these shows only invite politicians. And we all know what politicians are going to say. And so sometimes you have to invite the religious leaders, the labor leaders. You got to invite the unexpected people, the activists, and invite the investigative journalists and get them on. But for the interview with former President Carter, he was coming to make a speech in Sarasota and sign some books at the Sarasota News and Books, which is a great local bookstore in Sarasota. And he had heavy Secret Service protection, and he had written a book about the Revolutionary War. And there was a long line of people that came to see him at the bookstore, and he agreed to do an interview with us.
So gracious. So
gracious. He did a short press conference with us, and then the Secret Service says, if you want to do the interview, you got to do it right here in the bookstore. Well, there was no place to do it, because if we set President Carter out among the books, he would have no protection.
Yeah.
And there was, for some reason, I can't remember why, but there was very heavy Secret Service protection around the president, ex-president at that time. So Sarasota News and Books said, okay, we got a room for you. It's our stock room where we have our paper towels and we've got our
Oh my gosh, the
cleaners and all
toilet paper?
that. Toilet paper and all
Heaven
that.
forbid.
And it's in a 10 by 10 foot room. So my producer at that point, Jack Conley, was there. We had to pile into the room. Eric Jones was our camera guy. And so we piled into this room. We hung black curtains over all the supplies, so you couldn't tell we were in a supply room. And we were there with a burly Secret Service agent, President Carter, Jack, Eric, and myself. I was knee to knee with President Carter. And so we actually had to tape my questions afterwards because we only had one camera. So I was asking the president questions, and then afterwards...
And he never complained?
He
anything?
never complained. He didn't mind being that close to us, and it was like the most uncomfortable room you could ever imagine. But he had some great answers. He was talking about Middle East peace even back then. And he was just as gracious and down to earth as you could imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The stories just keep going and going. You have to write a book.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
As a managing editor, not just the moderator and the host, you have so much control over what the show, how it develops, right? And so how have you tried to make this a political show that's different from the others, especially nowadays when it's such a mean season for politics?
Yeah, when I watch cable news, I think people are put on because they're combatants and they have mean things to say about the other party.
Yeah.
And I think to an extent that happens on this show too. But also I want to go around the panel and give a chance for people to answer questions and then maybe make follow-up points a little bit and not feel like they're under siege, not feel like the host is attacking them. I mean, in some of the cable networks, the host is attacking one side or the other.
Right.
I want people to feel free to say, okay, this is what I really think, and we have some very honest conversations. I'm sure the audience has interesting reactions to some of the things that people say, but I really think that we got to get people on the record and have them really speak from the heart and speak from what they're really thinking.
And one of the things that you've done with the show over the years is to help to get new audiences connected and educated on the issues. How can we get more young people, young professionals, to engage more actively in politics?
Yeah, I think it's so important. I'm not sure if I've got the key, but we've done a lot of interesting programs. As you know, Lissette, a lot of people in Florida are NPAs and independents. About a third of Florida voters are not affiliated with one of the two major political parties. So we did a show a few months back in which we had all independents on. And then also a few months back, we did a show with young people, all people who were in their 20s or early 30s. And we asked them what they thought about politics. And it was a range of people. It was not just Democrats and Republicans, but it was libertarians. And we had a Democratic Socialist on. And we asked them to give us their ideas. I mean, I think what happens, how do you get young people engaged in politics? They've got to be portrayed in the media. They've got to have a seat at the table. We've got to listen to them. And we've got to find out what they're thinking, because they're voters too. And they have a stake in it.
Based on that experience that you had, what would you say was the common factor that young people were talking about that they need, the biggest obstacles that they're facing?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at the show, but I think one of the things that came out is distrust of all politicians and politics as usual. They want change, and this was prior to the most recent presidential election, and I think they wanted to see some significant change because they're hurting. They can't afford to buy a house these days.
Workforce housing is very difficult.
A big problem. Healthcare is a big problem. It's very costly. And I think they're worried about their education loans. And they want a way to pay. College is more expensive than when I went and when you went, I'm sure. So they've got to figure out a way to pay this stuff. And I don't think that we're hearing politicians really address those issues.
They need a seat at the table.
They need a seat at the table, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what's next for you? I know that so many of our viewers would like to know, why are you, pivoting? Why are you leaving the show?
I got to say, I don't want to leave the show. I love doing it, and I still have the energy to do it. But about a year and a half ago or so, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'm fighting it. And I go to Moffitt every couple of weeks, and I see all those people at Moffitt, all my fellow cancer patients, and it is an epidemic. A lot of people are struggling with it. I'm lucky. I'm feeling pretty good. But on some occasions, some days, it takes a lot out of me. It's harder. And as you can tell, my hair is falling out. For a while there, I was losing my voice. So, and I felt like I just wasn't able to devote the time to the show that I should devote. I love doing the show. It's one of the best things I feel I've ever done. And so I'm happy to do it, but I just felt like if I was going to give Channel 3 my all, I had to step away for a little bit and concentrate on my health, and that's why I'm doing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an interview program, which I've done for years here on the station.
Perspectives.
Exactly. In the past, I interviewed Jeb Bush, I interviewed Pam Bondi one-on-one. Al Franken was one of my guests. Jimmy Carter was one of my guests. Keith Olbermann, John Dean, a lot of those folks. Bill Moyers, who was a reporter and producer for PBS for many years. Great guy. We did an interview with him. I was interviewing him in Sarasota one time, and we took down a camera crew, and Bill was sitting there. He was drinking a Diet Coke, and he was making a point during the middle of the interview, and his hands went like this. Now we're taping the interview, and he splashed Diet Coke over himself, over me, and we had to shut down the camera. So everybody was horrified, but we he was making good points, so we got some towels, cleaned up the thing, got rid of the Diet Coke can, and carried on with the interview. But when you watch the interview these days, you can't tell it happened.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So describe perspectives. How do you describe it to the person wondering, like, what's it going to be like?
Well, it's going to go back to those days when I was doing a one-on-one interview, oftentimes with authors, famous big-name people that the public wants to hear from. It's a challenge, though, because the media has changed. There used to be book tours years ago. Politicians of all parties wanted to be on the media. And we would be inundated with ideas for people to come on, and then we would find some of our own guests. But now those days are different. I think some politicians are resistant to coming on shows like this or on Perspectives. So and the book tours aren't what they used to be. The publishers don't have the kind of money they used to have. They used to send authors around the country to do interviews. They don't do that as much anymore. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging. We're interested in Florida politicians. We're interested in Florida activists too. Right. And we're interested in everybody in between.
Is there a topic that maybe you didn't get into as much as you wanted to, and you're looking forward to doing that on Perspectives?
You know, if Paul Grove, the CEO now here at Channel 3, were in charge, he'd say, do sports. And there's a lot of interesting sports stories out there. I'm not sure I'm the best one to do sports. I'm really interested in great authors.
In everything.
Yeah, I'm interested in everything. I'm interested in history. We've had some of the great historians on locally. Ray Arsenault has been on. Bill Maxwell, the journalist from the Tampa Bay Times, has been on. Those would be the kind of people I'd like to interview.
Rodney Kite-Powell.
Rodney Kite-Powell from the History Center.
Bay History Center.
Really, really great guy. I mean, those would be the kind of people I'd like to interview, is people that have an interesting story to tell. Maybe in a hidden part of our history, or maybe there's something that we don't know about the state of Florida that we should be talking about. But I want to try to uncover something and not just do the kind of folks that you see all the time on TV.
Right. Any surprises? Was there ever something that happened on the set that you said, oh my gosh, I did not see that coming? That you can talk about on TV.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we used to have, Howard Troxler used to try to crack us up. He was a columnist for the Tampa Bay Times, and before that, the Tampa Tribune, and Howard would try to crack us up before, and would make the most obscene gestures. So,
oh my gosh.
But my friend Mark Proctor, who was a regular on the show, would always come with a prop. And so when it was Super Bowl time to come, he would brag and he would show his Super Bowl tickets. And then one time when somebody had decided to jump into an important local race, he brought out a rubber chicken. And he said, this politician can look forward to a lot of these kind of dinners. And he held up the chicken. The chicken was so funny because it just bounced up and down. But Mark, I love Mark's props. So.
Any advice for me? You leave
Well,
very
you're
big
already
shoes
an
to
experienced. You're already an experienced
Thank you.
journalist, so I know you can handle it. I guess my advice would be take them out to 4 green fields. They'd close down, so you got to find a new place.
Thank you so much, and best wishes to you. And we look forward to seeing you on Perspectives.
Thanks, Lissette, and good luck.
Thank you, and thanks for watching. Send your comments about this program to ftw@wedu.org. Remember, this show is on every Friday night at 8:30 and Sunday afternoons at 12:30, and you can also find us anytime on YouTube. For WEDU, I'm Lissette Campos. Have a great weekend.